Welcome back to the Script Snap. Today, we're looking at the 2005 epic, King Kong. A quick heads up, there are spoilers ahead. The year is 1933. The United States is slowly picking up the pieces after the Great Depression. In New York City, actress Ann Darrow and her fellow performers are struggling to keep their theater alive as audiences vanish and the money runs dry. When the theater finally closes its doors, Ann's mentor, Manny, delivers the crushing news. He's leaving the city. Devastated and unemployed, Ann is forced to wander the streets of New York, wondering how she'll survive. Meanwhile, ambitious filmmaker Carl Denham is facing his own links, desperately trying to convince investors to fund his latest project, a voyage to a primitive, unexplored island revealed on a mysterious map. But the investors aren't buying it. Overhearing their plan to cancel his film and seize his footage, Carl doesn't wait for the formal pink slip. He grabs his assistant and bolts. Carl orders his right-hand man, Preston, to prep the crew for an immediate departure. There's just one problem. His leading lady has dropped out. While rushing through the city, Carl spots Ann across the street. Seeing her beauty and desperation, he knows she's the one. He tracks her down and treats her to a meal, pitching her the role of a lifetime. Ann is hesitant at first, until she hears that the script is being written by the famous playwright Jack Driscoll. With Jack on board, she agrees to join the expedition. Under the cover of night, the crew arrives at the pier. With the police closing in to stop the unauthorized voyage, the ship narrowly escapes into the Atlantic. Space on the vessel is tight. Jack is forced to stay in the cargo hold, surrounded by heavy iron cages used by Captain Englehorn to transport wild animals. Also on board is the film's handsome but arrogant star, Bruce Baxter. As the ship ventures into unknown waters, Jack continues to toil away on his script, interrupted only by Jimmy, a young crewmate who found a home on the ship years ago after being discovered as a stowaway. The next morning, Ann finally meets the man who drew her to the project, Jack Driscoll. But as the crew settles in, a dark cloud hangs over the voyage. One night, the first mate, Hayes, pulls Carl aside with a chilling warning. He tells him that Skull Island is a death sentence, that if they set foot on those shores, none of them will return alive. But Carl, driven by obsession, brushes the warning aside. To him, the movie is worth any risk. Deep in the ocean, the ship becomes swallowed by a thick, unnatural fog. Blinded by the mist, Captain Englehorn's vessel strikes a massive rock. As the crew desperately maneuvers through a labyrinth of jagged stone, the ship eventually runs aground. While the crew panics at the wreckage, Carl can't hide his excitement. He has finally found it. He has found Skull Island. With the ship's hull riddled with holes and the crew working frantically on repairs, Carl seizes the moment. He leads his filming team to the shore, where they are greeted by a gruesome sight, thousands of human skulls lining the beach. Carl, ever the filmmaker, records every morbid detail. Deeper inland, they stumble upon a city in ruins, only to realize it isn't abandoned. Carl spots a young local girl and attempts to bridge the gap with a chocolate bar. Terrified, the girl bites his hand and retreats to an old woman whose skeletal, haunting appearance stops the crew cold. Suddenly, the team realizes they are surrounded. Before they can react, tragedy strikes. A spear pierces Mike, killing him instantly. The natives swarm the group. Jack fights desperately to shield Ann, but they are quickly overwhelmed. Just as hope seems lost, Captain Englehorn and his men arrive, using gunfire to drive the attackers back. The survivors retreat to the ship, frantically tossing cargo overboard to lighten the load and escape the rocks. But the natives aren't finished. Under the cover of darkness, they infiltrate the ship. Jack discovers a strange artifact made of bone and realizes with horror that they aren't alone. He rushes to Ann's cabin, but he's too late. She's gone. Just as the ship is finally freed from the rocks, Jack delivers the devastating news. The crew has no choice. They must head back into the nightmare to save her. On the island, Ann is bound to a massive sacrificial altar. She is the offering for Kong, the god-beast of the island. As the sailors arm themselves and row back toward the shore, the ritual reaches its terrifying climax. The great ape emerges from the jungle to claim his prize. But when Kong looks at Ann, something changes. Instead of devouring her, the giant ape gently takes her and vanishes back into the shadows of the jungle. The moment Ann's screams echo through the jungle, Jack and the rescue party charge toward the sound. Carl is the first to catch a glimpse of the beast, and he is paralyzed, not by fear, but by awe. He quickly urges the team forward, but his primary concern isn't just the rescue, it's capturing this eighth wonder of the world on film. Meanwhile, Ann attempts a desperate escape, stabbing the ape's hand with a sharpened bone from her sacrificial necklace. Her defiance is short-lived, as Kong quickly recaptures her and retreats deeper into the interior. When Jack finds a footprint the size of a wagon, the grim reality sets in. They aren't just tracking an animal, they're hunting a monster. As the team pushes deeper into the island, Carl's obsession with the shot only grows. He discovers a herd of massive brachiosauruses and tries to force his lead actor, Bruce Baxter, to pose near them. But Bruce's silver screen bravery vanishes in the face of real danger, and he bolts. Suddenly, the herd panics, triggering a thunderous stampede. Carl finds himself sprinting for his life, clutching his heavy camera as the ground shakes beneath him. Men are trampled and crushed in the chaos, and just as Bruce finds a place to hide, he is flushed out by a pack of predatory raptors, forcing him back into the terrifying race for survival. The chase leads the crew to the edge of a crumbling cliff. As the terrain gives way, both dinosaurs and crew members plummet into the abyss. In the canyon below, Bruce begins firing wildly at the predators, but his panic only makes things worse. The creatures collide and pile up in a frenzy of scales and teeth, leaving the survivors scrambled and desperate to find an exit before they become a raptor's next meal. Miles away, in a secluded clearing, Kong tries to interact with his new prize. Ann tries to play dead, hoping the ape will lose interest and leave. She manages to crawl away and hide, but Kong is far too fast, cutting off her escape at every turn. Realizing she can't outrun him, Ann relies on her theater roots. She begins to dance, performing the vaudeville acrobatics and pratfalls she once did on stage. Kong is mesmerized, but when Ann grows too tired to continue, the gorilla's temper flares. He lashes out, smashing the environment in a terrifying display of power before eventually calming down and leaving Ann alone. Back in the jungle, the rescue party encounters a dark, narrow bridge over a massive ravine. Hayes, sensing a presence in the shadows, orders the men to stay back while he tries to hold the line. But even Hayes is no match for the king. Kong emerges, seizing Hayes and hurling him into the canyon. As Jimmy watches his mentor fall, the team opens fire in a desperate attempt to bring the beast down. Carl, ever the opportunist, continues to film until Kong grabs the massive log the men are standing on. With a violent shove, the ape sends the log, and the men, spiraling into the depths of the canyon. Carl watches in horror as his camera, and his life's work, smashes to pieces on the rocks below. Ann, still trying to navigate the forest, stumbles upon a nightmare, a giant lizard feasting on a carcass. She hides among the tangled roots of a massive tree, but the predator scents her. Just as the creature's jaws are inches from her hiding spot, it is suddenly wrenched backward. Kong has returned, and he isn't ready to let his plaything go without a fight. As Ann attempts to flee, she is swarmed by giant centipedes, forcing her out of the shadows and into the path of an even greater nightmare. A Tyrannosaurus Rex, already clutching prey in its massive jaws, sets its sights on her. Ann tries to vanish into the dense foliage, only to find another predator lurking just inches away, ready to strike. But just as she is about to be devoured, Kong erupts from the jungle, slamming into the dinosaur with a bone-shattering blow. The odds quickly turn against the great ape as a second T-Rex joins the fray, sinking its teeth into Kong's arm. The battle becomes a desperate struggle for survival when a third predator attacks from behind. Despite the overwhelming odds, Kong's focus never wavers from Ann. He unleashes a flurry of devastating punches, shielding her from the snapping jaws of the reptiles. The duel carries them to the edge of a precipice, and in a chaotic tangle of limbs and scales, Kong and the dinosaurs plummet off the cliff. During the fall, Ann is separated from her protector, left dangling among massive vines as one of the surviving T-Rexes snaps at her from below. Kong scales the cliffside with incredible speed, intercepting the beast just as the vines give way, sending them all crashing into a swampy abyss. Cornered with nowhere to run, Ann watches as Kong delivers a final, brutal display of dominance. He tackles the last remaining reptile and, with a display of raw power, snaps its jaw in half. Standing over the carcass of his enemy, Kong lets out a deafening victory roar, reaffirming his status as the king of Skull Island. Safe and moved by his protection, Ann chooses not to run away. She decides to stay by his side. On the other side of the island, Jack regains consciousness in the aftermath of the log fall. He finds the few remaining survivors, but their nightmare is far from over. As darkness falls, the group is swarmed by a horde of giant, predatory insects. One crewman is killed instantly, his head crushed by the swarming monsters. Jimmy grabs a rifle and fires wildly, but for every insect he kills, 2 more emerge from the shadows. Just as the group is about to be overwhelmed, Captain Englehorn and a rescue party arrive, using heavy gunfire to beat back the swarm and pull the survivors to safety. Broken and exhausted, the crew prepares to abandon the mission and head back to the ship. but Jack refuses to leave without Ann. Sensing a final opportunity for fame, Carl Denham convinces the captain to stay, not just to save the girl, but to capture the beast. He plans to use the ship's supply of heavy sedatives to knock Kong out and bring him back to New York as the ultimate attraction. Unaware of Carl's dark intentions, Jack treks alone to the highest peak of the island, sneaking through a cavern filled with giant bats to reach Kong's lair. He finds Ann and the giant ape sleeping peacefully. Ann tries to slip away from Kong's massive grip, but the ape stirs, waking in a rage and attacking Jack. The commotion startles the thousands of bats overhead, which swarm Kong in a dizzying cloud of wings. Using the chaos as a distraction, Jack and Ann seize a vine and leap from the cliff. When Kong tries to pull them back up, Jack manages to grab onto a passing giant bat, using the creature to glide down to the forest floor and make a daring escape. Furious and heartbroken, Kong charges through the jungle in pursuit. As the couple reaches the massive wall at the edge of the island, Jack screams for the crew to lower the bridge. Carl, obsessed with his prize, hesitates, wanting to lure the gorilla into the open. But Preston, seeing the danger his friends are in, defies his boss and cuts the ropes. Jack and Ann scramble across just in time, reuniting with the crew as the king of the island closes in. The moment Ann reunites with the crew, she realizes the horizontal truth. They aren't there to rescue her, they're there to hunt. When Kong erupts from the jungle to reclaim her, he is met with a barrage of harpoons and a massive steel net. Jack and Ann plead with the crew to stop, but their voices are drowned out by the chaos. Seeing the situation is lost, Jack pulls a devastated Ann toward the shore. Kong, believing Ann is being stolen from him, summons a primal strength and tears through the net. He charges the beach, but as he reaches the water's edge, Carl Denham delivers the final blow, a sedative bottle shattered against the ape's face. Ann can only watch in heartbreak as the King of Skull Island collapses into the sand. Weeks later, the bright lights of Broadway announced the arrival of King Kong, the eighth wonder of the world. The show is a sensation, and the box office is flooded with people eager to see the beast. Carl has finally achieved the fame and fortune he craved, but the cost was high. Jack Driscoll sits in the audience, his heart heavy. Since their return, Ann has vanished from his life. She could not forgive the part they played in Kong's capture, and she refused every cent of the blood money offered to her. Carl takes the stage, spinning a narrative of heroism. He pays a hollow tribute to the 17 men lost during the voyage, claiming the show is a monument to their bravery. As the curtains rise, the audience gasps. Kong is there, shackled in heavy chrome chains, a hollow shadow of the king he once was. Carl introduces Bruce Baxter as the hero of the story, while a group of dancers performs a sterilized, theatrical version of the Skull Island ritual. When the sacrificial actress is brought out, Jack realizes it isn't Ann. It's a stand-in. At that same moment, the real Ann Darrow is performing in a small, quiet theater across town, struggling to move on. Back at the premiere, the flashes of press cameras act like a trigger. Confused and blinded, Kong's patience snaps. He searches the stage for Ann, but when he realizes the woman before him is an imposter, his grief turns to pure rage. The audience cheers, thinking the ape's struggle is part of the performance, until the heavy chains snap like thread. Pandemonium erupts. Kong tosses the fake actress aside and tears through the theater walls into the streets of Manhattan. Jack is nearly crushed as the ape focuses his fury on him, beginning a terrifying chase through the city. Kong stalks the snowy streets, causing wreckage and terror, stopping every blonde woman he sees in a desperate search for the only person who ever showed him kindness. Hearing the sirens and the roar that haunts her dreams, Ann runs toward the center of the chaos. Meanwhile, Jack uses a car as bait, leading Kong away from the crowds and into the open. The hunt through the concrete jungle ends in a standoff, as Kong finally corners the man he believes stole his queen. As Kong prepares to strike, Jack is knocked unconscious, but the ape's rage instantly vanishes the moment he sees a familiar figure stepping out of the shadows. It's Ann. Finally reunited, the tension leaves Kong's body. He gently picks her up, and for a brief moment, the chaos of New York City falls silent. They wander through the empty, snow-covered streets until they reach a frozen pond in Central Park. There, under the soft glow of the moon, Beauty and the Beast share a quiet, playful moment on the ice, a final memory of peace. The silence is shattered by the thunder of artillery. Startled and under fire, Kong flees, scaling the skyscrapers of Manhattan to escape his hunters. He climbs higher and higher until he reaches the very top of the Empire State Building. Above the clouds and the city lights, he sits with Ann, watching the sunrise in a brief, tragic moment of calm. But the reprieve is short-lived. The hum of biplane engines fills the air as the military closes in. Knowing the plains are a threat, Kong places Ann in a safe spot and climbs to the highest spire, putting himself in the line of fire to draw the attackers away from her. Ann refuses to hide, climbing out onto the ledge to be near him. Despite being riddled with bullets, the great ape stands firm, lashing out at the plains with every ounce of his remaining strength. Below, Jack regains consciousness and rushes to the scene. He fights his way past the guards and begins the grueling climb up the tower. Ann, desperate to reach Kong, slips on the cold metal and nearly falls to her death, but Kong's massive hand catches her just in time, pulling her back to safety. As the planes circle back for a final, lethal strafing run, Kong realizes this is a battle he cannot win. Ann screams at the pilots to stop, trying to shield him with her own body, but the damage is done. Mortally wounded, Kong looks at Ann one last time, his grip loosening as the life fades from his eyes. The King of Skull Island falls, plummeting from the clouds to the streets below. As the crowd gathers around the fallen giant, Jack finally reaches the top of the tower and pulls Ann into his arms. Down on the street, the sidewalk is swarmed by onlookers and photographers, all jostling for a glimpse of the carcass. Carl Denham pushes through the crowd and stares at the broken legend he brought to this concrete jungle. When a policeman remarks that the planes finally got him, Carl shakes his head. He knows the truth. It wasn't the planes. It was beauty that killed the beast. So what did you think of this epic retelling? Was Kong a monster, or just a king in the wrong world? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, be sure to like and subscribe for more. See you next time.